Fears are rising over the fate of the remaining hostages held in Gaza after Hamas said it was unsure whether it could bring forth 40 Israeli civilian captives as part of a United States-backed ceasefire proposal. A senior Hamas official did say on Wednesday that Hamas does not have 40 living hostages in Gaza who met the criteria for an exchange under a proposed ceasefire agreement with Israel being negotiated. The assertion raised fears that more hostages might be dead than previously believed and came as talks between Hamas and Israel stalled amid disagreements over the permanency of a ceasefire, the return of displaced Palestinians to northern Gaza, and other issues. Meanwhile, President Joe Biden has promised Israel ironclad U.S. support amid fears that Tehran could launch reprisal attacks for an attack that killed senior Iranians. Mr. Biden warned that Iran is threatening to launch a significant attack after Israel struck the Iranian consulate in Syria 10 days ago. Joining us now on this show as we discuss the Middle East conflict and its impact on Nigeria is Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, Nigeria's former Minister of Foreign Affairs. Good morning, Professor Akinyemi, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Dr. Abati. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Ayo.
Good morning, Prof.
Thank you so much.
Good morning, Prof. Sir. Good to see you. Looking handsome as always.
Thank you.
Well, Prof.
Happy birthday, Rufai.
Thank you, sir.
I won't say more than that. You know what I mean.
Well, Prof, so much
Yes,
has happened.
Dr. Abati.
Yes, Prof, so much has happened with this Middle East conflict. The attack on the Iranian consulate in Damascus, the back and forth in the United Nations Security Council about the demand for immediate ceasefire, the American version, the version that was eventually agreed upon by 14 of the 15 members with the U.S. abstaining. Lord Cameron, Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom, saying, well, UK will continue to sell arms to Israel, even when there are demands by MPs for legal advice on whether indeed or not Israel has broken international law, which I think is obvious enough. And then the US saying, okay, we will review our relationship with Israel if you don't allow humanitarian aid, which some people have said is just election season talk, very hypocritical on the part of President Biden. And then, of course, the latest, the threat of an escalation of conflict with Ayatollah Khamenei saying that, Iran is going to retaliate. And Israel saying, well, any form of retaliation will be met with a strict decision. And then the argument over hostages and all of that. So, Prof, can you help us unpack the story?
Thank you so much. You've put together so many things that, in a way, I'm going to disappoint you guys this morning because I cannot make sense of what is happening in the Middle East. Of course, nobody, even if you read the Bible, I apologize. If you read the Bible, you still cannot make sense of what is happening in the Middle East. On your program several months ago, I once said that the world, or maybe I should say the Western world, is suffering from a guilt complex arising from the Holocaust of the Second World War. And because of that, they feel that they must allow Israel to get away with anything and everything that Israel does, even when it amounts to violation of international humanitarian law and international law of war. Incidentally, I really wonder who has suffered most. Is it the Jews or is it we blacks arising out of slavery? But I think that will probably be a conversation for another day, especially since now institutions are starting to pay to pay compensation for their own role in slavery. However, let me put it this way. Who is provoking who in this particular issue that we're talking about? Israel killed, if you remember, those 7 innocent people who had been there to help feed the hungry. They killed them. Israel bombed Israel bombed the embassy of Iran in Syria. The greatest violation of international law, if I remember my international law, they bombed it. Then Israel killed 3 children and I believe 4 grandchildren of the Hamas leader. Now, I ask you, if it are the children of Netanyahu who got killed by Hamas, all Western leaders would be in Tel Aviv by now, commiserating with Netanyahu. Instead, what do we have? United States saying it will back Israel to the hilt if Iran hit back in retaliation. I mean, if somebody had killed the child of Biden, the United States would have leveled that country by now. So, how can anybody make sense of all of this?
Yeah.
When those 7 innocent, sorry?
No, go ahead, sir. I was agreeing with you. Go
When
ahead.
those, okay, when those 7 innocent people were killed, as Dr. Abati said, there were calls for countries to stop supplying weapons to Israel. Even the United States was making noises in that direction. And then a few days later, what do you have? The United States saying it will back Israel to the hilt. So I don't understand what is going on in the Middle East.
All right.
But one thing is clear. Netanyahu, I think, is determined to have a war. Is determined to have a war.
All right.
He is provoking Iran and Iran allies in order to pull them into attacking Israel. And when that happens, all other countries will join in. Now, it is true, and people have said so, and I agree with them, that Israel has nuclear weapons.
All right.
That is true. Iran does not have nuclear weapons.
All right, sir.
That is true. But, sorry, I can't,
Yes,
I'm
Prof,
sorry,
I was just
somebody
going
is
to come
talking
in.
to me.
Okay, please go on, sir. I was just going to ask a question around that, but once you're able to land your point, then I'll come in to probe a bit further.
Okay, Ayo. It is true that Iran does not have nuclear weapons, but Iran can still inflict unacceptable damage upon Israel with the weapons that it has. How big is Israel? So if the whole purpose of Netanyahu's war aim is to protect Israel and to ensure the survival of Israel, is going about it the wrong way. What he's doing is likely to lead to very, very serious damages upon Israel. You said you wanted to come in.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for laying that foundation. Important points. So from what you shared, you said Israel, especially Netanyahu, is hungry for war. Would you say that the United States, through its actions or inactions, are fueling this thirst for war? Bear in mind that just a day before President Biden had declared his ironclad support for Israel, he had mentioned in an interview that he didn't agree with Netanyahu's war strategy. So would you describe that as speaking from both sides or not being clear in his directions as to whether or not to condemn Netanyahu's aggressiveness against Hamas and the effect on the Gaza Strip? Or do you think that he would lean more towards supporting Israel as America has traditionally done for so long? So basically, is America fueling this thirst and hunger for war by Netanyahu?
Listen, Ayo, President Biden is confused. He's a confused man. I believe that, it's a bad example for 80-something-year-old men. It's a bad example. Speaking from both sides of the mouth. I was having a conversation with an ambassador who visited me just yesterday, and he came up with a theory. He said, has it ever occurred to me that actually the United States may be pushing Israel into actually starting a war rather than the other way around? That we've all thought that the tail was wagging the dog. That has it occurred to me that from the things that President Biden said and his supply of weapons, that actually he may behind the scene pushing Israel. I don't know what the United States will have to gain, but he suggested that I should look at the position of China. That China has kept out of this, it's kept quiet, it's as quiet as you can come, and that the United States may actually want a war in order to stop China from overtaking the United States and becoming the #1 superpower in the world. Well, I've been rolling that around in my head because nothing that President Biden is doing makes sense to me.
Okay. I like that angle you've put into it. And let's just think through a couple of scenarios here. If that's the case, and they are having a willing buyer, willing seller relationship with a Netanyahu, who has always fomented trouble, and who has always believed in the annihilation of the opponents, which is Gaza and Hamas as we speak. And the Americans are thinking of curtailing China through the Indo-Pacific area. Recently, the Japanese PM was there. The Japanese PM was predominantly there for military partnerships with America. That was what it was there for. And they have many partnerships now. Also, they've brought Australia in the fray under the AUKUS agreement. And they also have France, because France has some foothold in the Indo-Pacific region. They're creating weapons together and all of that. If this is the plan, do you think America is succeeding? Because some watchers say America has succeeded at keeping Russia at bay as we speak now. They've given something to Russia to be busy with Ukraine, which they are supporting. Now they are trying to draw China out through what they are doing in Israel. So do you think America is succeeding at this plot? And how long is it going to last? Vis-a-vis, for the very first time, a strong divergent opinion by the intellectuals and a strong divergent opinion as against the dictates of the deep states in America. So for the first time, there's an ideological shift in the university system. The likes of Harvard University, we are seeing openly pro-Hamas mindset and ideology being pushed around against the normal dictates. So is that era once again of a shift? Can you help us unbundle all of this?
No, I can't help you unbundle all of it, because not only the United States, there was an article in The Guardian of the United Kingdom a few weeks ago, where the writer, who used to be in the United States, we actually met in one of the universities in the United States, was warning the world that we may be walking into a World War III without really realizing it. That this is the way Europe walked into the Second World War. He put together all these issues that you have put together, and as to how the world has changed, but that the changes that the world is going because of the Middle East is in itself an issue for the United States, and that it is unfortunate that this is an election year in the United States, and that Biden doesn't really know what to do. You know what I wish? I wish we had somebody like John F. Kennedy in the White House. A bright young man, but who had the capacity for bringing in the brightest and the best in the United States.
You wish we had a Kissinger?
With no. A Kissinger was a warmonger. I wouldn't trust. I would trust Max George Bundy, who knew how to persuade a president to use force in the pursuit of peace without losing the objectives. Kissinger was a warmonger. I wouldn't trust him in the White House, not at this time.
Well, Prof.
But we should be worried. All of us should be worried, including China, that has stood aside and allowed Russia, the United States, even Iran, to probably hoping they will burn themselves out. It is only a misstep that constitutes a mistake that can lead the world into war. People may think that they are managing this crisis. They are not managing the crisis. How could you be managing the crisis when you deliberately go and kill 3 children of your opponent? Are children now targets of war? Even Hitler didn't do that. Well, Hitler killed everybody, but at least he was mad. And maybe Netanyahu is the new Hitler that we have, which would be very unfortunate to use that term.
Prof, 2 quick things. One, is there the question that is on the screen, put there by Arise News, Israel-Hamas war, is there any end in sight? Iran says it will retaliate, and I guess at some point they will, to defend their own sovereignty. Netanyahu says, whoever harms us, we will harm them. So, do you see any end in sight in this conflict, Israel-Hamas, or an escalation? That's number one. Number 2, what do you think of the relevance of the United Nations Security Council? Post-World War, League of Nations, United Nations creation to hold world peace. But we see that nobody seems to be listening to either the United Nations Security Council or the International Court of Justice, which also came up with a ruling that it cannot enforce. So where are we with regard to this search for peace? Since the 30 Days War, First World War, Second World War, League of Nations, all of that. Is the world more impaired today than it had ever been at any time?
Yes, you are quite right. The world, we should all be praying. If you are in the prayer mood, you should be praying. Because really, the way I see it, only divine intervention could stop us from killing ourselves. And well, maybe that's what God wants, for us to kill ourselves, so He can recreate a new body of human beings who will perhaps be more rational than the one that he created last time. I don't see an end to this crisis, because each time you think we've moved close to a rational war, a rational end, Netanyahu does something else. If Iran does not retaliate, and if you were the leader of Iran, will you want your people to see you as a toothless bulldog? That they just that Israel hits you whenever it wants to, and all you do is to, I think Iran will hit where it wants to hit and when it wants to hit. It could be smart enough not actually to hit Israel, but to hit assets of the United States. And it may not hit the assets itself. It may use its own assets, Hezbollah, to hit the assets of the United States. And that will be a signal to the United States that, well, I've retaliated. You can hit me back, but not to hit Iran directly. There are games that, we can play, or all these parties, can play. As regards the United Nations, I feel so sorry for the Secretary General of the United Nations because he's done his best. Are we now close to that situation where, like the League of Nations, then became irrelevant? Are we close to the Security Council of the United Nations becoming irrelevant? Yes, we are close. However, that doesn't mean that the Security Council should now go home. No. I think that in several capitals of the world, people are probably wishing and hoping that the Security Council will just through one of its resolutions. Maybe people will be tired. The people who are involved in this will be tired and will be looking for a face-saving institution. And that's where the Security Council will come in. The Security Council has to be on standby. It is in standby mode now, hoping that somebody will now whisper into his ear. It happened. People don't seem to realize this. During the Cuban crisis, it happened. When John F. Kennedy sent that message to Khrushchev about pulling the rockets out of Cuba in exchange, but quietly, of America pulling its own rockets out of Turkey without announcing it. If Russia had rejected that, there was already a back channel to the Secretary General of the United Nations to make a proposal, which Kennedy then said they will accept out of respect for the United Nations. Fortunately, it never got to that stage. So and that's why I keep talking about, the use of brains, the use of rationality, being able to play a game where at the end of the day we are all winners and there will be no apparent losers. But really right now, there are no brightest and best that I see around the White House. And yet it is the United States that actually can stop Israel from committing all of us into a war of perdition.
All right, we have just 2 more minutes, sir. Just to ask you, I hear you saying that the United Nations Security Council have done their best, but some people might disagree that their responses, even though they voted on more humanitarian aid, access in Gaza, has been underwhelming, insufficient, and perhaps they could have done more in condemning the actions of Israel. What's your take on this?
Read between the lines. It's no use bringing a resolution condemning Israel because the United States will veto it. But something happened which I'm afraid even some of my colleague scholars, it escaped them. The Secretary General of the United Nations, for this particular one, for the first time in, I believe, 11 years, activated Article 99 of the UN Charter. Now, Article 99 is the only article in the UN Charter that empowers empowers the Secretary General of the United Nations to actually bring to the attention of the Security Council an issue that he thought could not to cut words, could lead to a world war.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, and he did. The last one that was done was 11 years ago, and I think it's so 7 times is when Article 99 had been used. So it has not been recklessly used. He did. Now, he knew it was going to be vetoed by the United States. But he wanted the world to know how close the world is to destruction. And of course, it was vetoed, but he had done his job. So when you say that they had not condemned Israel, read through the lines of several of the resolutions that had been brought before the Security Council and look at why the United States had vetoed those resolutions. If I were to deconstruct all those resolutions, in it, I will find, by the way, including the interlocutory judgment of the International Court of Justice.
All right.
Judges at the international level, speak softly.
Yes, sir.
And the International Court of Justice actually has condemned Israel.
Well, thank you so much.
So, and there's another case. There's another case going on before the courts now, where Ecuador has taken taken Germany. Is it Mexico?
Yeah, there's also an issue between Ecuador and Mexico. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Before the court, over the supply of weapons to Israel,
all right,
they are accusing Israel, they are accusing Germany of being complicit to genocide by supplying weapons to Israel. Now,
Prof, I'm so sorry, we're out of time at this time. And the conversation on the Israel-Hamas war will continue. And we hope to have you again to discuss in detail, even as facts emerge on the process. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Professor Bolaji Akinyemi.